I'd like to call the Windsor Board of Education special meeting, hybrid meeting via Zoom and in person, to order. First order of business is the pledge, and then a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Next order of business is audience to visitor, and I think Alexis and Kevin are going to tag team over there. Probably starting with Alexis.
Good evening. This is Alexis Shack from the Superintendent's Office. If there's anyone from the public who would like to address the board, you may do so in two different ways. If you're using the Zoom application on your mobile device or computer, you may enter your comments into the Q&A feature located at the bottom of the Zoom menu bar. Or you may raise your hand on your computer if your device has a microphone by selecting the participants icon on the Zoom menu bar and then clicking raise hand, or by dialing #9 on your phone. You will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address. When you are called on, you will be promoted to panelists. After you make your comments, you will return to attendee status. For clear communication, we ask that you do not place the call on speakerphone. No comments can be made against the employees of the district or the children outside of your own.
And do we have no open questions?
Anyone in the queue there or chat?
There's no hands raised, and there's nobody has open questions.
Okay. Is there anybody in the boardroom who'd like to address the board tonight? Seeing, hearing none, is it okay if I move on? Okay, audience to visitor is now closed. Next item on the agenda is presentation on the academic and performance data, and Dr. Oliver. And before I let you start, I'd like to defer to you about how you'd like to take questions. Do you want to take questions when we get into different sections? And to me, that may make sense, because then to go back, we have to kind of go through that. So if you think you want to wait to a certain point and then have the board ask questions, that's fine. So.
Yes, President Fury, I would recommend that we stop along the way for questions. So I would like to stop after the introduction and then after each school presentation.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, so with that being said, I will jump into this evening's presentation. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Santasha Oliver, Assistant Superintendent for Instructional Services, and it is my distinct pleasure to facilitate our performance and academic data update. I am joined this evening by our principals, our leadership team, as well as our directors of curriculum, Ms. Bonnie Feynman and Dr. Noha Haiti. So this evening, we will provide a very high-level overview of the Next Generation Accountability System. We will present our most recent academic data, alongside of that of our data from 2018-19, in an attempt to answer the question on everyone's mind: where are we with respect to pandemic recovery? Were we adversely impacted? And if so, have we recovered? So again, we'll begin with an overview of our state and district data, and then we will move on to our school strengths and strategies for improvement and briefly discuss next steps. All right, so the Connecticut Next Generation Accountability System for districts and schools are a broad set of 12 indicators. An example is shown here that provide a more complete picture of a school or a district because it guards against teaching to the test or tested subjects. It expands ownership and accountability to more staff. So gone are the days of focusing on just reading or math. You'll see here that in our new accountability system, there are indicators around art access, physical fitness, as well as career and college readiness. The new system also allows schools to demonstrate progress on outcome precursors, such as being on track to graduate in 9th grade and access to the arts. While this accountability system surely goes beyond the test, there are several indicators that do focus on the test. So I will be remiss if I did not mention in 2019-20, all statewide assessments were canceled due to the global pandemic. And so you will see there are no results or no data listed on slides related to the state summit of assessments. In addition, I'll add the Connecticut State Department of Education was committed to administering the state assessments throughout the pandemic, and that was really to monitor long-term trends and evaluate the full impact of the pandemic on student achievement and growth. However, if you go back to that year, you remember that was the year that we returned, but it was anything but normal. Many students learned and took assessments at home, and as such, these variables make comparing data from the 2020-21 school year very difficult. And as such, the state of Connecticut has opted to report this data separately to avoid inappropriate comparisons. However, you'll notice on several of the slides, there is a link. So if you're interested, you can click on that link and you can look at the data. But for the purposes of our presentation tonight, we will not be presenting state data from 2019-20 because there was no data. And then we will not be presenting the 2021 data because, again, it was very variable. All right, so now let's jump into the accountability system. So our district accountability index is formed from these 12 accountability indicators. These indicators measure academic achievement, growth, chronic absence, career and college readiness, graduation, post-secondary entrance rate, physical fitness, as well as access to the arts. You'll also notice there are distinct points for the high needs supergroup, which are indicated with a capital H on this slide. And just for viewing public at home, the high needs group consists of students from low-income families, English learners, and or students with disabilities. So this is the district's most recent district accountability report. Unfortunately, this report is from 2018-19, and that's because the state has not yet released our most recent report. I don't know exactly when that report will be released, but it's likely that it won't hit our hands until December or maybe even January. So for the purposes of this presentation, we are going to focus on the data that we do have, which are for indicators 1 and indicators 2. As you can see here, the District Accountability Index back in 2018-19 was 75.9, whereas the state of Connecticut's overall accountability index was 74.2. And I'll also add indicators are attached to a weighted point system that informs an overall rating shown here. So if you recall, we had a very in-depth presentation on our district accountability report as well as our school accountability reports prior to the pandemic. So we're not going to go into any detail this evening, but I did want to remind the board and viewing public where the district was prior to the pandemic. So this is a pandemic recovery report that was actually put together by the state of Connecticut. And this report gives us an idea of how districts fared from 2018 2019 school year to the 2021-22 school year. So you can see here, each bubble represents a Connecticut school district, and Windsor is shown in red. So right in the middle of that cluster, you see a red dot. That is representing Windsor Public Schools. The horizontal line, or the x-axis, shows academic achievement from the 2018-19 school year. The vertical line, or the y-axis, shows the difference in achievement from 2018-19 to 2021-22. So if the difference in achievement between these years is greater than 0, you'll see that horizontal line which reads no difference, then that means there was no difference from 2018-19 to 2021-22. If you see a dot or a district above that line, then that means achievement exceeds pre-pandemic levels. If the difference is less than 0, then achievement lags pre-pandemic levels. So as you can see here, that red dot, Windsor Public Schools, is below the line, which means that our academic achievement currently lags pre-pandemic levels by about 3 points. So this evening, you will hear from our schools who are continuing to strengthen the promising instructional practices that we were employing before the pandemic, and we were beginning to see some gains, especially with respect to academic growth. So where did this pandemic recovery report, where did these values come from? They actually come from our accountability report, and specifically indicator number 1, which is derived from our state summative assessments. So at this time, I'm going to dive into accountability indicator number 1, which measures academic performance. So remember, there are 12 indicators on the district accountability report, and this slide is highlighting indicator number 1, which again measures academic achievement. So here you can see how we did on our state summative assessment, so that's Smarter Balance ELA, Smarter Balance Math, as well as Next Generation Science Standards from 2018-19 to 2021-22. And for comparisons, I've also added the data from the state of Connecticut. So as you can see here, academic achievement is pretty much, it's a one-time snapshot measure of a student's academic performance. So for example, in the spring, a student takes the Next Generation Science test. That's a one-day, one-time test, and it's a snapshot of their academic achievement in science. And that data is rolled up into this index score. So as you can see, our academic achievement has remained unchanged, but we have seen some movement on the growth metric, which is accountability indicator number 2, which we will go into right now. So accountability indicator number 2 measures growth. So remember, academic achievement, it's a snapshot in time, whereas growth is actually measuring 2 points in time. So how did the same student do in a particular subject area between 2 points in time? So for example, year 1 to year 2. So here's an example. If we had a student who in grade 4 had a score of 2,300 in mathematics, and then in grade 5 had a score of 2,400 in mathematics, we would say that student grew 100 points over that 1 year period. You'll also notice here there are distinct points again for that high needs group. And so the goal for academic growth is always 100%. So whether or not a student is performing up at or above proficiency, our goal is for 100% of our students to reach their individual growth targets. So to recap, we've looked at overview of our district accountability report. We've looked at accountability indicator number 1 for academic achievement. We've looked at accountability indicator number 2 for academic growth. And so both of these indicators are derived from student performance on the state summative assessments shown here. So this is the state performance, our student performance on Smarter Balance ELA, Smarter Balance Math, and Next Generation Science Standards from 2018-19 to 21-22. The indicator also includes SAT. So as you can see here, these are the mean scores for the evidence-based reading and writing and math scores from 2018-19 to 2021-22. And then that last row, the dot or with the dotted line, that's the percentage of students at or above benchmark. And I would add here, the benchmark, these are new college and career readiness benchmarks, and they are based on actual student success in entry-level college courses. So the College Board has come up with these cut points or these benchmarks, which indicate a student is more than likely to be successful in an entry-level college class. So far, I've presented our state sum of assessment data for Smarter Balance and Next Generation Science Standards. At this time, I would like to turn it over to our Directors of Curriculum, Dr. Noha Haiti and Ms. Bonnie Feynman, to provide an overview of our district assessment data from iReady and STAR.
Good evening, everyone. Before I start, I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page in terms of some of the formatting. So this chart, you're looking at our district assessment. So this is our STAR or iReady assessment. This is our district diagnostic assessment. It is not reported to the state. We use the diagnostic assessment. We give it 3 times a year, at the beginning of the year, mid-year, and end of year. And we are using the diagnostic data to drive our instruction, our curriculum work, and everything else that we do to make sure that our students, by the end of the year, are at grade level. The reason you're seeing STAR set / iReady on some of the years, that will tell you that some of the grade levels, so for example, 18-19, all of the yellow boxes, that's when we had STAR. So that was STAR testing. iReady is a different test. So 19-20, we did not have data. This is the year, our COVID year, that we went home in March. So we had beginning of the year data, but then we did not take mid or end of year. But then starting from 2021, this is an iReady year. So every single grade level K-8 took the iReady test in math. 21-22, K1 and 2 are in yellow. That denotes that that was STAR testing. So we were back to STAR, and I'll explain why, for K1 and 2. And then we did iReady testing for all the other grades 3 through 8. This year, we are back to iReady. This is our final switch. We are going to stick to iReady for the next coming years. And the reason we went back to STAR during the pandemic was that STAR was not, we could not give it virtually. So that year we had to be hybrid. We had to test some of our kids at home. And STAR did not recommend that we give that test at home. So iReady, on the other hand, was okay to give at home. We had a system in place where we can actually administer iReady at home. So this is why we made the decision to go back to iReady. Now, back to 22-23, we're back to iReady for all grade levels in math, and as well as reading as well. And also the 22-23 data that you see right here, this is the beginning of the year data. So I just want to make sure that you're aware so that we're not comparing apples to oranges. All the other years, you're looking at end of year data. This year, you're looking at beginning of the year data because that's the only data point that we have at this point. Some of the trends that we have seen, so, if you look at it even beyond 18-19, we were very stagnant. And, yes, COVID did hit us a little bit, but I would not say that we have seen an incredible decrease in our scores. It was really stagnant to start with pre-COVID and, during COVID. However, one thing that we've seen is that we were able to accelerate growth. So pre-COVID 18-19, the average growth was 9.2%. pandemic hit, hybrid year 2021, the growth was 18%, and then last year's growth was 20%. So what we were able to do was to really accelerate growth so that we can start catching up. At this point, we're basically where we were pre-pandemic. So we are in a place to start, with the trend that we're seeing with the acceleration of growth. We feel like this year is our year to start really, exponentially growing kids in terms of getting kids not just to meet their growth target, but also to meet grade level expectation. So, we talk about growth, and growth is great. We want everyone to grow. However, if kids are still not meeting grade level expectations, so if they don't end the year at grade level, we still have a big problem. And every year that goes by that students are not at grade level, the gap gets bigger and bigger. And it's really hard in math. So, I have been meeting with all teachers in the district. We're doing our data talks in math. And I talk about how in K2, the gap is small. So if a child is in second grade and they are 2 grades below grade level, it is possible to catch them up within a year. But then you get to middle and high school, and you're talking about kids in middle school who are at a first grade level. It's almost impossible to catch them up in that 1 year. So our strategy and our targets this year, and you're going to hear more about it from principals, we're really focusing on our tier 1 instruction and our accountability in terms of data. We want to make sure that teachers are watching and monitoring students very closely so that we're intervening in time. We're not waiting until January to intervene. We're watching the data on a regular basis. There is an accountability system in place where everyone is accountable to doing what we need to do so that we can get kids at grade level and accelerate growth.
So Dr. Hades shared a lot of what I would have shared. Our trends look very similar. The tests, these 2 tests have the same function, whether you look at what they're used for in mathematics or in reading. As Dr. Hades said, they're diagnostic in nature. We also have some features on iReady that allow us to monitor progress. That's based on the standards as well. But again, these are not tests that are identical to like Smarter Balanced or the SAT. These are local assessments that we give here to inform instruction. Just adding to what Dr. Hades said as it pertains to literacy in particular, our team, based on the results of our tests and breaking down all of the subdomains and subcategories, have realized that our biggest areas of need are in nonfiction reading and vocabulary building. So similar to what Dr. Hades' team is doing and focusing very, very closely on the data, we're doing something similar, but we're also focusing our instructional support and most of our instruction around strengthening those 2 areas, which we have seen has been greatly impacting where students are performing on these tests. The other thing I just wanted to mention, I don't want to take up too much time, I was able to identify a couple of trends that might be interesting to the board and to the public pertaining to the reading iReady and STAR tests. Just like Dr. Hades said, we've made up ground. So in 2018, 2019, almost identical to her group, we had 9% growth in terms of students meeting or exceeding the benchmark. Fast forward to 21, 22, we doubled it. We had 18% of students meeting or exceeding the benchmark in terms of the growth. So we have seen some catching up, which has been a good sign. The other trend that we've also noticed on our side is this year, our beginning of the year data started 5% higher than last year's beginning of the year data, which is obviously favorable to how the end of the year could end up for us. So I just wanted to mention those 2 trends. The other interesting trend for me when I looked at this was our average growth in 2018-19 and the hybrid year 2020-2021 was identical at about 8.5%. So that was kind of interesting for me to see. But I would echo what Dr. Hades said in terms of what we're seeing and where we're going with the local data and instructional needs and support.
Thank you, Director. To sum up this section and to reiterate from our director, our major overhead is the improved academic achievement. And you will see this priority reflected in our strategic operating plan as
Okay, thank you. Looking to my left, I know the person who's going to have the first question. Based on, you have the seniority on the board, so.
Oh. That's a low blow. Okay, I tried to find how the District Accountability Index was formed, and what weight is given to each of the 12 indicators, but I couldn't find it, and so maybe you can tell us.
Yes, so it's very small here, but if you look, this is actually a screenshot of our accountability report. So the 12 indicators, broken down by all students and high-need students, you'll see the list, and then if you go from left to right alongside the top, you'll see the point values there. And I will note that the point values and the weights do differ between the elementary, middle, and high school band, and that's simply because different bands are scored for different indicators. So for example, at the elementary level, they wouldn't have an indicator related to being on track in 9th grade. Or, you know, they wouldn't have an indicator related to AP tests because it's not appropriate for that grade band.
Well, the overall index then, are you saying it's, I see here about, well, there are 12 indicators, but a lot more, there are sub-indicators here. They each have exactly the same weight.
No, so you'll see different, so under max, what is that, this 5th column, max point. So each indicator is worth a different point value, and they're also weighted differently at times. So for example, indicator 1 is a roll-up of Smarter Balance ELA, Smarter Balance Math, CTAA, and so at the elementary level, it's an even distribution, but then it's weighted differently at the high school, a 2 to 3 ratio. So there's actually like a 100-page manual on this. So if you're interested to know more about the methodology and the specific calculations, we can get that information to you.
I think I'd like to see it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just regarding academic growth, for example, if a district had, you know, if students, let's say at the 3rd grade level, when you are beginning this, right? This is where it begins with the SBAC, right? So if a student or a group of students started out with a very high, let's say, score in the 3rd grade, compared to some other group or another district that started out with a low, I mean, would that not, the growth mean that someone who starts out at a lower level has an advantage in growth in that there is more upside that they can go to, and therefore in the indicator called academic growth, it's certainly important, but that would mean that they could consistently show higher growth than another student who, you know, did not have that much, yet may have scored considerably higher. That's the sort of thing that happens with that growth?
Yeah, so the state actually uses a vertical scale to kind of put everything on the same scale. So, you know, regardless of what grade you're looking at, it allows us to compare across grades. So for example, a student moving from grade 3 to grade 4, based on their performance in grade 3, the state will identify a specific growth target for that student. So let's say student 1, their growth target may be 100 points, whereas, you know, maybe student 2, their growth target is only 50 points. So basically the idea is every student is meeting their growth target, and then we get prorated points based upon that.
And how do they determine the growth, the benchmark growth, if we want to call it, or the target growth for each student?
It depends on kind of where they fall along the level. So for example, there are 4 performance levels, so level 1 being low,
Yeah.
level 4 being high,
Yeah.
and they kind of cut up those levels into categories.
Sure.
So for example, a student could be in level 1, but a low level 1. They could also be in level 1, but a high level 1. So depending on where they fall, the state determines what's a reasonable growth target for them. So we don't identify the growth targets for the student. That's actually a metric, a calculation that's done by the state of Connecticut.
Okay. Thank you. Did you say you gave the academic performance index for the state? I thought you did. I'm asking, my question was, we have an academic performance index for Windsor, right? So, is an overall?
Yes,
Does
shown here.
the state have one? I mean, did you, I may have missed it. Did you
Yes.
mention an overall index? I know that there are state for individual indexes, but
Oh, you're talking about the total. The total was 74.2 in 2018-19.
74.2
Yes.
was the states, was the districts, and our
And a
district?
district was 75.9 in
75,
2018-19.
Okay. Now, maybe, I want to see if I'm going beyond this. Maybe the question I have here is for the next group, but you tell me if you want, it talks about SBAC, I talk about, Windsor SBAC, well, since I talk about SAT also, maybe it was, let me see if this question applies. Windsor SBAC scores are below the state average of ELA and math by 5 to 10 percentage points for academic proficiency, and it generally is the same for SATs. Now, is it a possibility that Windsor can reach and possibly exceed the state averages, and how soon could that be if you think they can? And I guess I'll just throw in the next one is what barriers are there for Windsor to achieve the higher levels?
So while I don't have a crystal ball, I would say I'm confident that we'll be able to meet and eventually exceed that number. And that's basically based on the trajectory that we saw prior to COVID. So again, focusing on our ultimate goal is to increase academic achievement. And so in order to do that, we have plans. So we have school plans, we have district plans, really focused on strong Tier 1 instruction, and improving our climate and culture. So I would say between those two things, we're hopeful that we'll begin to move back in the right direction.
But you're not hazarding a guess when? You have your growth index.
So going back to before the pandemic, our academic achievement was stagnant, but right at that time, we were starting to see an uptick in the growth. So the idea is that hopefully that goes hand in hand, because if we have students that are below that achievement level, eventually, if they're meeting their growth targets and exceeding their growth targets, we can get them up to level and beyond.
So when you meet your level, what goal do they go to after that?
The next level, we're going to keep going. Exactly, we're shooting for the stars.
Okay.
Level 4.
Right, level 4, okay. And maybe you'll get into this later or something. I was just curious, what barriers are there? Do we have any particular barriers in Windsor, either monetary or others, unknown things that you come against? And, maybe that's too general a question here.
Well, I would say Windsor is a very well-resourced town, but we are still experiencing some barriers and challenges from the pandemic. I know we like to think the pandemic is over, but chronic absence was really an area of opportunity for us. Our district rate went up to about 30%. So we know the research says students need to be in school in order to be successful. So that's actually, we're focusing on that at the district level and at individual buildings. And we've recently convened a district-wide attendance review team to take a closer look at our practices and to see how we can improve our practices, not only at the district level, but at the building level.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? I'm going to go back a step. You described, oh, sorry, didn't see you, sir. No, you're up. I thought, I didn't see anybody raising their hand, so. Mr. Wollaston, better late than never.
Yeah, I guess so. Sorry. I was just going to say I was looking at the academic performance index, and I see that we took the harder hit on math and science, as those were nearer to 5 points in a few categories from the district column, and in ELA it was like 3 points each. And I was just gonna say that I understand that we're coming off a tough time and that there's a lot going on, even working in a school myself and seeing that everything that's going on in the school that I work at. And I just hope that you guys leave here inspired to continue to work towards the uptick. Sometimes looking at the numbers can be very discouraging, as we see we lost points here, but it doesn't have to be a punitive way to look at it. We, as they said, we have things that are not looking too bad, and academic growth is a positive that we have here that we can work with. And if we focus on the positives and the things that are going right, we can bring up the things that aren't as right with the inspiration that we get from what we have that we're doing right. Math and science are always going to be the harder of the bunch. As we all know, we've sat in those math and science classes, and it's not the same as just making up an essay the night before. But I just want to encourage you guys to just keep doing the good work.
I mean, I'm listening.
You know, I'm just saying, just encourage you guys to just keep it up. You know, I believe in Windsor Public Schools, and I know that a lot of schools are facing their difficulties, but I believe we can overcome as a district and as a group. I just believe in us. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Claes?
Thank you. I thought it was really great information that you provided around the chronic absenteeism as a barrier. And if you have other information like that, that you can provide the board, that we can help with outreach to the community as well, I think that'd be important to share with us going forward. Also, I know in some of the sections, there's going to be some discussion around equity. And so it's really good to see these assessments and the percentage of proficiencies. But in order for people to understand the equity, the needs, we might want to see the metadata that kind of breaks it out even more to show which students are, how students are doing based on demographics and other types of things. So I don't think that's something we need to know now, but it's just something in the future I wouldn't mind knowing. Thank you. And thank you for this. Great.
Another question?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's since I had the question on the high school SATs, which were, there was a,
So the way we set it up, so that the questions would stay with the section.
Yeah.
yeah,
Panels has a lot.
I thought we went over,
We ask questions for every single school level.
okay, why don't we wait for that, okay?
Wait for the school level. I just had a quick question myself on, you touched on it a little bit, but if you could explain again, on the second page, it talks about demonstrates progress on about talking about the new generation accountability report in general. Demonstrates progress on outcome precursors. Can you explain that again? I know you touched on it.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, that's just meant to highlight the fact that this report, it's a comprehensive, broad look at a school or a district. It goes beyond the state math test, or it goes beyond the state science test. So precursor, so for example, graduation, right? Yes, there's an indicator here for graduation, but there's also an indicator for on track in ninth grade. So for example, do freshmen at the end of the year, have they earned 6 credits? So if we know it's a 25 credits to graduate, at the end of their freshman year, we would expect them to have about 6 credits. So how many students, what percentage of students are on track in ninth grade? So not just looking at the outcome, did they graduate, looking at kind of, those incremental steps towards graduation.
Okay, thank you. Then as to the STAR and iReady, it talked about district assessment on both reading and math, percent above benchmark. This is not a state test, this is our own
Correct.
internal, but how are the benchmarks set for Windsor, or does iReady have benchmarks in general, or is it Windsor sets our own, what we consider benchmarks for those tests?
I would say both. So, the vendor, they do have recommendations, but we also set our own here in Windsor. Dr. Haney?
So for STAR, we definitely, we're able to set our own. But for iReady, it is set at the company. It's based on the grade level standards. So when we say, for example, if you look at 21, 22, third grade 47, that means that 47% of our students in third grade were at grade level by the end of the year.
Okay, so
So-
benchmark is grade level
Yes.
equivalent. Okay, thank you. And third grade is an important historical place for students as they learn to be really ready to, they say, how a student does in third grade helps to determine how successful they are. So I know the board in the past has talked about the importance of, not to put the pressure on Jay and Taryn on K1 and 2, but make sure that they're ready when they leave those schools that, and again, we take, it's not as if we can say, we're only going to take students that were in the district in kindergarten. We take whoever happens to live in Windsor or has the right to be in Windsor to go to school. So thank you very much for that definition. Thank you.
All right. So at this time, thank you, Directors Haiti and Feynman. At this time, I'd like to invite Principals Gruber and Mahalko up to talk a little bit about what's going on in our pre-K2 schools.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Good evening. Darren Gruber, principal of Oliver Ellsworth. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having us. I will start us off talking about strengths, academics. So we talked a little bit about the iReady test. We had STAR up until this year, other than the hybrid model. And with the iReady test, we're seeing tremendous preparedness of our kids coming in. So for example, on the reading assessment, 89% of the first graders are ready to learn grade level content. So that's awesome. 78% of second graders are ready to learn grade level content, and that's in reading. And then in math, 86% of first graders and 71% of second graders. So we're ready to go. We're going to keep that going, and we're going to end on a very high note this year.
Yeah, so for Pequannock, it's very similar for overall for first and second grade for literacy. We're looking at 85% of students being prepared. That means students who are at either the beginning level of the grade level or one grade level below from the end of the year expectations. For mathematics, we're at 79% overall as well. So we've really hit the ground running this year and looking forward to having a very successful academic year with our students in the classroom. Okay. And then we have another strength is around the SEL and the DESA. The DESA Mini is an assessment that the district adopted with our SEL focus that will allow students to answer questions, allow teachers to answer questions by the students, seeing whether or not their social emotional competencies are something that needs support, that are average or above average. And at the end of the year, at Pequannock, we had 88% of students were identified as being typical or having strength in SEL, and that's a tremendous growth from the beginning of the year. In addition to that, for SEL, our teachers, social emotional, has been a big focus as well to make sure that everybody is feeling that it's a positive work environment. And at Pequannock, we had 85.7% of staff respond that they felt that they were working in a positive work environment, which is great. So that means that our kids are really making gains and getting the support they need in social emotional, and so are our staff.
And similarly, at Oliver Ellsworth, we had a great increase of our students able to succeed in the classroom without SEL support. Just in terms of the family survey results, almost all of the questions yielded more than 80% positive. There's a couple parents in the audience, so they know this to be true. So for example, there is a positive learning environment at my child's school, 95% positive. Another example, my child's school values the diverse backgrounds of students, 90%. And then an academic piece, my child's school communicates how my child is performing academically throughout the school year, 93% positive. We're going to get that other 7%.
Yep, and another big strength is our family community. I think I went out of order there. I apologize. Who cares? So I don't. So family and community partnerships. So sorry, you do, Dr. Oliver. Has also been a very strong thing. At our school, 94.2% of our families responded that they felt engaged at our school on our survey, and it was really great. Our PTO is amazing. We actually presented the data from both our climate surveys and our academic results with the PTO and got feedback from them in terms of what they would like to see us continue to work on. And they said definitely the engagement piece is tremendous. And it has been just wonderful this year between the block party to kick off the year. So many parents felt like that was amazing, not to have to choose which school they're going to, but being there. Our open house, like we didn't just have moms and dads, we had uncles, grandmas, grandparents. We have our Spookly movie night coming up on Friday. Already a ton of parents have responded that they're looking forward to coming to that. There'll be hot cocoa if any of you guys want to join us. And it's just, it feels like a real school year. It really does. It really does.
Yeah, and just anecdotally, in terms of positive work environment, we recently had a district walkthrough, and almost every person, many of them in this room, commented on how good the school felt and how welcoming and how cheerful and joyful. So our joyful learning community is alive and well.
So that's our strengths. Am I going first?
You know.
You don't?
So for me, someone mentioned that our math is slightly lower than our reading throughout the district. So this year, I decided to really hone in on math for my school goals. Obviously, we're a pre-K2 school. We need to work on reading, but I think we have a lot more systems already in place to just keep on refining, getting better. I really wanted to dig into the math piece. And I had, to me, those bullet points are kind of linked. And what I mean by that is a new thing. I know one of the questions is what's new this year that we didn't do last year. I had a pretty magical day with Dr. Haiti today. We met with 2 or 3 teachers at a time, went through every student's data, and each teacher had to commit to what they were going to do differently to increase that academic achievement. So it was a really powerful day and something that we've never done, and we started today. And why I say it's linked, so those data talks with that commitment, they're going to say how their explicit teaching of concepts during small group, during mini lessons, is going to improve. It's also going to, our data is going to drive where our push-in support is and where our interventionists go, who they work with. And then, lastly, the coaching cycles. Again, helping teachers who made that commitment to live up to that commitment.
And then also for our schooling, our Tier 1 instruction, there's been some incredible work done over the summer on our curriculum and a lot of really great updates in terms of how can we best meet our students' needs based on data from the previous year and years before that. And so we're really looking at our Tier 1 instruction, right? So rather than focusing on remediation, what is important is that the students all have access to incredible instruction in the classroom. And with some of the new content, making sure that we're really focusing in on it's referred to as the I, we, you model for instruction. So first the teacher is saying what it is that they're going to be teaching, what the kids are going to learn about, and then they open up that black box, right? So how do you think about it? How do you process this? How do you solve it? And then you bring in the students for the discourse and discussion. And so we did a really great job last year of small group work and student discourse, but it started to kind of bleed over into that introduction piece. It was almost like we're jumping into that we portion of the lesson. And so we're really being intentional about if we're going to provide the level of rigor, we need to make sure that students have a strong model for what it is that they're going to be doing and how they're going to be demonstrating their learning.
So then moving into positive school climate, Jay touched on this a little bit. There's just a real different feel in our schools with parents being able to come into the building. Ms. Galinsky knows we were standing room only for our open house. It was packed. I think there's people that had to park at Target and walk down to OE.
Paul, you didn't come to our open house.
So it just has a really good feel, and we just want to build on that and move it also to how that impacts our academic achievement. So we have these fun events, but how do we capitalize on that so that everyone is working towards our achievement goals? So that's why it's a strategy for improvement.
Yep. And then in terms of, equity and SEL, I mean, we already heard with the desk with the 88%, we want 100% of our students who are able to have the social emotional needs met. And in terms of the equity piece is we have an incredible district. We have an incredible school at OE, at Pequannock, at all our schools. We're only talking for ourselves, so we'll focus here. And if students don't have access to that incredible education, they're not going to be able to gain the benefits from it. So one thing Dr. Oliver brought up was the chronic, I'm out of time, chronic absenteeism. I'll go real quick, sorry. And that is if a student is not there at school, that they can't access that. So what are the things that we need to do? What are the needs that need to be met, whether it's transportation, whether it's having access to books at home? What is it that we need to do so that every child is able to access that incredible education?
Yeah.
That's like, right?
And Jay's trying to throw me off my game today,
Sorry.
but that doesn't happen. He skipped another bullet, but I'm going to come back to it. So refine and refocus restorative practices. And again, this was one of the questions that we got. I'm just going to take a hit on this one. I think we did not do a good job last year of re-upping our philosophy around restorative practice, our protocols, our procedures, what people in the building did what. And we kind of reflected on that from last year. So we had people come over the summer, meet on a PD to kind of reset that. We also have a lot of new staff that probably never were in those trainings when I had Mr. Higgins in my building. So Mr. Wood is getting that back going. So it's kind of a reset, I would say.
All right. Well, thank you for that very informative presentation. At this time, I would like to pause and open the floor for questions.
Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What I've heard about OE and Pequannock, I'm hearing anecdotally throughout the district, the different feel this year, and that's great. That's what we were hoping for, and moving last year was the transition from pandemic, and it's great to be able to have parents, especially at the younger grades. That's very important for parents to know that they have that access to be there. Not necessarily every day, following their kids around, but and so many parents asking, how can I help? That's great. So questions here? Starting with Mr. Panos.
Well, if you like to say. I think you've touched on my questions here. Strategies for improvement academics in Tier 1 instruction. You mentioned something about small group instruction last year, and this year you're going to do something somewhat different. Is that it? Could you?
Was that the question?
Yeah, the question is what? Just flesh that out a little bit. What is, Tier 1 instruction we've had all along. And so so when you list it as a strategy for improvement, I'm trying to figure out what about Tier 1 instruction is.
What's different?
Right, so as I said before, the focus is around, we have some of the curriculum been reworked. There's a lot of great work that happened over the summer. And so whenever you are using something that is new and improved, there is a learning curve to it, right? And so making sure that we're providing our teachers with the supports that they need to provide that instruction in the classroom. That also includes opportunities to increasing the amount of time that they have to co-plan, right? Providing opportunities to go into each other's classrooms and see what's really working. And the primary thing that I focused on before was we were doing a really good job around discourse, like students talking with one another. But what we weren't doing as much was that first part of your lesson, which is where you're telling basically students what you're going to learn, and then modeling for them how you do it. And at that point, you need to have the students' full attention, and then having them talk to one another.
Thank you. That was
Yeah, I think I answered it for OE to a large degree, but I did forget one piece. We also have a new math program called Number Corner. And what we found was kind of a weak link in our math instruction was that students learn a concept and then they do very well on the classroom assessment, and then they might forget that because it wasn't deeply ingrained in their brain. So Number Corner is a program that scaffolds, so those concepts are revisited frequently, so that students keep that concept in their brain.
Oh, okay, yeah, that kind of anticipates a question I had a little later. Thank you. That's, and I was just curious. You kind of explained the use of the word equities here because it's an abstract term. So what you're talking about is what you mean by it here is kind of a specialized use that if a student doesn't have certain resources elsewhere, you're going to provide them. Not that we're doing anything inequitable that we have to correct, but it's
Right, inequities exist.
Yeah.
Inequities exist, and so it's
Well,
our job then to make sure that we remove as much of that barrier as possible to those inequities so that everybody can then have access to the incredible education that every student deserves.
Right, okay, I think I see how you're using the term.
And believe in it.
Yeah, I mean, typically, they're now using the term to mean differences. Some people are poor, some people are wealthy, so, or that's the use of the term inequity. Today, I guess that's a new, otherwise it's just fair. Equity means fairness, and you're supposed to, and we're supposed to provide, what a student needs. I guess that's the way you're using it. So, and I think you've answered the restorative practices, the refined and refocused. So I'll thank you for that.
Any other questions? Mr. Wollaston?
Yeah, simple question. I'm gonna ask it to everybody. So if you hear it now and you're gonna come up here later, so just prepare an answer if you have one.
That's not fair.
No, but
Mr. Parker's lucky.
it's just
He'll have
all
lots
I'm
of time
asking
to
is,
practice.
yeah, I'm just asking if there's anything that you guys need to help meet your strategies for improvement. And I'm not saying this to get you guys in trouble in front of your boss, but because I believe we're a community that's trying to educate our students together, and if there's a need, then it should be made known now, or now or never. If there's a need, it should be made known now, so we could just know. So
For
we
me,
can
I
help you
would
do what
just
you
say
have to
that
do.
I do have a BOE liaison that I meet with monthly, and we kind of go over where we're at and also ask her to advocate for things that we need as they occur. But I think we're in a really good place right now. But thank you. Appreciate it.
I think just continue to support this incredible district and town.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on. At this time, I'd like to invite Principals Lee and Mitch Snow to the table.
Good evening. Hi there, Jen Mitchell, Principal of JFK. Tricia Lee, Principal of Clover. So we're going to kind of tag team, and I'll talk a little bit about the academic side. She'll talk a little bit about the school culture side, and then can ask any questions of us as you like. I would say that our schools are very similar in terms of development and developmental needs. And one of the strengths that we have going into this year is that we are far more instructionally focused than we have been in the past. So moving into year 2 for me is really about, you're going to hear this over and over again, tier 1 and really the data use, and also helping teachers to understand how data does drive their practice. So there's a year of stabilization. One of the things that had to happen was full staffing. There were 16 vacancies at JFK when I arrived, and we were able to fill those positions finally to the point where I only have 1 vacancy in speech and language. So we are a full team, and we are using that team to its greatest capacity. We're new, right? So that brings challenges and opportunity. 5 new classroom teachers, which I'm very happy with. But it also begs the question of what is their pre-existing understanding of their practice and what teaching and what good teaching and learning looks like and feels like. So we are in a developmental phase around instructional practice now that the school has been stabilized, and several students and other issues that needed to be addressed have been addressed over the course of last year. So you'll hear the same things probably across all of the schools here in Windsor. And to your point, Mr. Pianos, the strategies for improvement probably will always be the same because they're the ones that actually make difference for kids. It's how the implementation of those practices looks and how their efficacy is measured that changes year to year. So the strategies that your question specifically for our schools was these strategies come up often, and so the question is, yes, what is the difference? What is different from how you're looking at PLCs this year than before? So I would say across all of the strategies for improvement that we have listed, there's a fine-tuned focus on making them instructionally based. So these are the practices that will change outcomes for kids, things like well-developed school development plans, MTSS system that really focuses on data collection and actually progress monitoring students on a weekly basis, and teaching teachers through PLCs to understand data trends and what changes differently as a result of their data. So the iReady test, Mr. Pianos, also to your second question, gives us anticipated growth rates. So you asked of us, how do we know kids on grade level are stagnant? Because the iReady test tells you how much of their growth rate they have met, and if they did it all. And there were significant numbers of children across both of our schools last year who started on grade level and left on grade level, but did not move anywhere else. And that is a problem. We made significant gains with kids who's 2 to 3 years below grade level, but the kids who are already on grade level did not get any better. So the focus for us this year, and the iReady test will tell us every time we administer it how much of a child's growth rate has been met. The focus for us is to make sure teachers understand how to teach on grade level students as much as they know how to teach students who are off grade level. Yeah? Culture? Sure. Along those same lines, culture is extremely important, and being new to the district, Principal Mitchell as well, being new, I was lucky enough to have a staff that's been established. But then it's a matter of them getting to know me and my expectations and what we need to do to move everything forward of the district initiatives and accountability. Accountability for the teachers, then again, rolling down to the students. Parent participation as well has increased incredibly this year. I think that's because of the loosening of the COVID restrictions, but also our open house was, people were parked all over, Toby, all over. They were really excited to come into the school. We had a popsicle with the principal before I started, highly attended by so many just people in the town wanting to know what's going to be happening at Clover. There's a lot of moving and shaking. We had our very first PTO meeting, and it was the highest number of PTO representation in the past 3 years. We had 25 people, either virtually or in person. And the PTO is ready to move. Thank you, principals at Pequannock, for sure. The families are ready. And with that comes accountability and expectations for the families. When we talked about attendance and chronic absenteeism, we have our district attendance committee, but also each school has their own committee. Our committee met, and we found already, looking at data from last year to this year, of course, we know it was a hybrid COVID year, we had over 60% of our students in school 100% of the days from the first month of school, as compared to 21%. So our attendance is on track to continue to do that. We want to recognize those students and those families who really treasure and know how important it is for students to be in school so they can learn. Our culture also revolves around the staff, feeling psychologically safe, empowered, and being known that they have a voice. So that's where the PLCs come in. But the PLC structure, holding that structure and holding it accountable for the teachers to be able to review that data, to look at their Tier 1 strategies that they're using in the classroom, but then expanding it to their Tier 2 strategies. How are we looking at that data, digging deep, and looking for focused instruction for those students who are not meeting the benchmarks that we want them to meet at this time? And Dr. Noha and Bonnie have really helped us work on the data review process. And that is something that the teachers are, they know and they've bought into, and they know that that is a priority for us in order to do what we're meant to do, which is to move kids forward.
Thank you very much. And again, the excitement to hear, too, about what's going on. The parents are back and engaged, and I know at Clover, a new playscape, too. I know people were excited about it. Questions? Yeah. Yeah.
So comprehensive.
Mr. Panos?
No, I wonder if you could just expand on what you're doing regarding absences.
So, okay, good. It's probably similar. Students have to feel like they belong. So we have a tiered response to attendance at Clover. If a student is absent for 2 days, the teacher calls, lets them know we miss them. What can we do to support them? What is it that you need? We've had some students who were late the first couple of days of school because they didn't know they could take the bus. Making sure the parents knew that they could take the bus, where their bus stop was. I've ridden the bus to make sure that students were getting on the bus, meeting them at the bus stop, greeting them there, getting on the bus with the students home, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Those type of things, those responses to the attendance when students are absent, letting the families know that we miss them and that we want them here at school.
So I would say to you that there's the managerial aspect of attendance, which is obviously making sure that we're compliant with what the State Department of Education requires around notifying families about the definitions of chronic absenteeism and tardiness. So we have that system in place. After a certain number of days, students get letters. We have a committee at JFK that meets monthly to talk about the students on that list and deal with what I think is way more relatively important and realistic, which is why are they not there, right? So it's one thing to follow and be compliant with the rules around the managerial piece, but for me, it's why aren't they there? And how can we help? So we are very blessed at JFK to have significant numbers of staff members who do support student success outside of classroom teachers, who obviously do as well. But we have our SEL specialists, we have a family resource, an FRC, we have psychologists, social workers. So those people sit on that committee with us, and we talk about those individual students and what types of needs they have. I'm happy to say that we are picking up significantly more numbers of inquiries around home visits. That was something that we did not do exceptionally well last year, and me being new, I had a priority list, and I have to get to things over time, right? So one of the things for me this year is really looking at that homeschool connection, and just last night, there were 5 teachers that went and visited a family already. So we're looking at the kids that are on that list and trying to understand what it is that they need to be able to be present and there every day. So we do have, and I guess that all of those decisions come through the committee. And the committee is made up of not only teachers, but also other support staff, and we make action plans around those kids.
Thank you. Maybe we can, maybe at the end of the year, we can get a little update and see how it's going.
Right, absolutely. Yep, sure. Attendance data is very easy to get.
At the end of the school year, or toward, you know,
The
as a
home visit part or the
No,
the absentee?
just ask, I'm just saying the progress in this
In
absence.
terms of absenteeism, so yes.
Absentee issue.
Okay.
I wasn't sure myself.
Right.
Anything else, Mr. Panos?
No?
Ms. Taylor?
I am excited about your enthusiasm, especially both of you being new to the district. I just have to say, district-wide, to be this nearly full staff is huge, because we all have watched the news and folks are leaving the world of education as quickly as folks are coming out of UConn and so on. So the fact that you just said that you're just down a speech and language pathologist, but I'm going to have to help with that because my baby needs a speech.
I got you. I understand.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Point of privilege. So, Mrs. Lee, you said something, and I just want to repeat it. You said you want to make sure that the staff is psychologically safe. Huge. I said in a meeting sometime back when all of the pandemic was happening, we were all home probably, virtually in a meeting, I said, if our staff and our educators aren't okay, the kids won't be okay. And I think when you're talking about just the full breadth of the educational experience, it starts literally with the folks that are educating our kiddos, and I'm just really glad that you tossed that in, because it's not just the SEL piece, and I need all the board members and people at home to listen to this. It's not just the SEL piece for our students, it's the SEL piece for the people who are educating our students. So when you're talking about equity, when you're talking about making sure that everyone is mentally okay to even just be educated at all, it really does start the moment you land, in your building, and if you're not good to go, it's just not gonna work, and the kids are gonna pick up on that. So I really, really appreciate that part. And then when we're talking about chronic absenteeism, it is very difficult, again, if you're not okay as a child or a family, everything that's going on at home, you're taking that with you to school. And so, again, back to the SEL, back to making sure that our that line of communication with the families are there. I'm really glad to hear that. I'm also glad to hear that it's like standing room only, and I know I couldn't find parking for open house, and I was also on PTO, and so many people on. This goes to show that families are ready to be back. Let's grab them. This is the time to do that. When you talk about Christina Morales and team and everything that's happening, the fact that we ran out of food at the back-to-school situation, that's a good thing. That means that people want to be back, and it wasn't good? Okay, I'm so sorry. You didn't get your ice cream? Okay, I'm sorry. We'll do better next time. But I just want to highlight those points, because oftentimes it's just about data. What are the test scores saying? But we can't even get to that if the kids don't want to come to school. So thank you for all that you're doing. I'm really glad to hear about the strategies, and I too would love to hear, what everything's looking like come March, April. Thank you.
Ms. Cantor and then Mr. Wollaston.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I know it's very difficult for everybody to get back in the swing of things. It's really hard on everybody between the buses, delivering the kids, the buses picking them up, the teachers and the staff, the shortage, the coming and going. And people are afraid still, but I'm glad they're coming out more, and I think we've made some good strides. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wallison?
Yeah, just to piggyback off Ms. Taylor, I believe it boils down to culture as well. Whether it's being fully staffed and remaining fully staffed, or whether it's the absences with the students. If you have an environment where the teachers and the peers and the whoever's don't even want to be there, can you imagine why the students wouldn't want to be there? So it's just a real big deal to me, culture, because I've experienced it myself, just not being in a classroom that feels all right. So it's a great thing to focus on. And as I promised, the $1 million question, is there anything that you need or any way we can support you?
So I would honestly no. I would just like to thank you, because I've been in several different school districts and spent some time training principals across Connecticut. And I think what's really effective and powerful is that you're able to, for the most part, work very well together and give us as leaders the freedom to make the decisions that we need to make in order to benefit the students. So I feel as if I'm very supported by all of you. Several of you have students with me, but others I don't have your students, but I still feel I could call any of you and have a conversation at free will. So thank you for that openness and for your ability to work together to help the kids.
What Principal Jen said, but also tomorrow will be Whoopie Pie Wednesday at Clover. So staff is getting Whoopie Pie, so if you want to come, Mr. Lockhart, you know the door's always open, so come on.
pie?
Yeah.
Who doesn't like pie?
Yeah. But thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you both so much. Thank you.
All right, Principal Jorgensen and team.
Pie.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Leanna Jorgensen, principal of Sage Park Middle School. Tonight I have here with me my right and left hand. Thank you. Ms. Jennifer Ballness, assistant principal, and also Mr. William Fisher, assistant principal as well. All right, let's get this show on the road. So excellence every day for every child is a theme that we have at Sage Park Middle School. My entire staff and myself, we have recommitted ourselves to really working in all of the best interests of our kids. We know that the last 2 years were difficult, and so this year we did take some time to reflect on the last 2 years and make some considered efforts and recommit ourselves moving forward. And so with that in mind, we talked about really focusing on our Tier 1 instruction, trying to bring our instructional level back to where it was as we were starting to make an upward trend climb. And so focusing on Tier 1, really digging into grade level content and teaching that within a gradual release process so that all of our kids are able to access it, while also providing scaffolds and support. PLC, professional learning time, making sure that time is sacred, that it's uninterrupted, that teachers can count on meeting with their content level peers to disaggregate data, to make sure that they work with each other, to calibrate on work. And so that is a personal strength. I pride myself on that. I do not touch teachers to cover others, especially if it's during the time that they have their PLC meetings. I've sat in front of you for about 2 years, 3 years or so, and talk about multi-tiered systems of support, and I am I'm very proud to say that is a strength of ours. As we take a look at, it's the framework that we have, we all do as in the district, but it's the framework that we use to make sure that we're proactive, that we're not waiting until students fail in order to provide them with the supports that they need. And so we have benchmark systems set in place to identify kids who need support, and we provide them with support in a timely fashion. And then there's peer coaching. It is a strength. It's also a strategy as well that you would see later. In my building right now, we have about over 20 new staff members within the last 2 years. And so when you think about the size of the building and how can you get some really good modeling taking place for individuals to see what it looks like for good teaching, right next door. Sometimes you have a model teacher right next door. And so we pride ourselves on our teachers working with each other, being able to visit each other and see their partners execute on lessons, and we pride ourselves on that. As it pertains to our school culture, SEL, social emotional learning, this year we redesigned our advisory, going from 2 times a week to 5 times every single day. We pride ourselves working really hard on making sure that we explicitly teach our kids about the social emotional 5 competency areas, self-awareness, social awareness, responsible decision-making. And so every day, every week, we have specific lessons that are designed. Kids are acting out scenarios where they are working through issues. We also, Motivational Mondays, you can hear me every week on the intercom talking to our students about what is our focus for the week. You can also see it in our newsletter that goes home to the parents saying we will be working on this next week. Here are some ways that you can help your students with the social emotional skill that we're working on. And after school enrichment programs, that is a strength. We all know that for students to belong and feel like they belong in the school setting, we have to get them linked either to individuals or to programming that it's taking place. And so we push our students. We have our intramurals is off the ground. We have our clusters are off the ground. We have our summit after school where students stay for after school support. We have our various clubs and programs in addition to that, which is chess club, TSA. And so there's a lot taking place at Sage Park Middle School, and we work really hard to get those programs in place as soon as we can so that kids can start to feel belonging and as if they, not as if, that they have a place to be at Sage Park. We know it's middle school and they're wishy-washy, right? So we have to link them as soon as possible. Strategies for improvement. Instructional coaching with all the new staff members that we have, making sure that we set our coaches up to provide coaching cycles for our teachers to walk them through the processes and good teaching practices. Peer visit, as I mentioned before. We have walkthrough that we look at data and we look for overall trends throughout the building, trying to identify what are some patterns that we see that we need to improve upon, and teachers during that sacred PLC time have time established within their schedule to take a look at that. We also take a look at data, and we are finding new data tools in order for us to be able to garner accurate data, pre and post data, so then teachers have data to look at, to disaggregate, to plan for instruction, and to implement, and to meet the kids' needs at their level while working on grade level content. And then we have some revised protocols to address chronic absenteeism. And I do believe that was one of your questions, Mr. Panos. And so I will say in brief, in the past, we were very reactive to chronic absenteeism. You know, we waited on kids until kids started to become absent. When we would start to send letter, we would have the counselors reach out after the fact. And so now the approach that we're taking is that we have sent letters already to families of students who were chronically absent last year. We have counselors reaching out, trying to determine what are some of the issues that your child faced or barriers so that we can help before they start to occur again. We're also looking at celebrating our kids who are able to make it to school on an everyday basis. It doesn't help that the state has given us 2 mental health days, which complicates matters. However, It's there. So we're going a little bit old school with attendance because kids love to be celebrated, and so why not? And so those are some of, in brief, some of the things that we're doing to revise some of the protocols that we've had before for chronic absenteeism. There's more, because when we think about chronic absenteeism, it's not only with kids who are truant, but we're talking about kids who are absent for any reason, including suspensions. In our school culture, some of our strategies for improvement: consistent implementation of our community agreements. So along with the lines where we say excellence every day for every child in the building, we also had some agreements that we all decided that we were going to implement every day. So an SEL starter to start the class, making sure we call students by their names and learn the names as quickly as possible, greet our students in the hallway before we have to redirect them, making sure we also post academic and SEL goals, objectives on the board on a daily basis. And those are some of the brief community agreements that we all agreed to follow during the year. We're also going to be collaborating with community health partners, CHR, and My People's Choice. My People Clinical Services, thank you. We know that we have a higher rate of students who are experiencing anxiety as a result of just some of the trauma they've been through, loss of family members over the past couple of years with COVID. We also know that sometimes the services that they need are beyond the scope of what we're able to provide them within the building. And so if we're able to connect community partnerships with our families and make those services easily accessible to those families, I believe that will go a long way in helping our students, one, come to school, work on the chronic absenteeism, and also if they're in the building, we can help them to succeed. And then the last thing is strategies to re-engage partners. Our parents as partners. We literally shut our building down when it came to COVID. We didn't want families or anyone coming into our building. And so now we have to rebuild that. I do believe that when parents get to the middle school level, there is the idea that because they want to foster independence within their student, that they have to step away. And we don't want that. We actually are telling parents through open house and everything else, we need you to be a part of the school environment. And so one, I did have, I mimicked Dr. Hill, where I had coffee talk last week, 3 days, one for each grade level. I will be doing that bi-monthly. It used to work so much better virtually, but we'll keep it going. We're also going to have a Dads of Great Students programs at Sage Park, where we have the dads coming into the building. And so that kickoff will be October 19th in the evening, where we're going to be inviting all dads, uncles, and everyone to come on in. And then we are also, our PTO will be off the ground. We are really still really trying to pull parents in to participate in the PTO at the middle school level. So if there's anyone who's sitting on the board as a parent who would like to participate, we'll take you.
Well, thank you, Principal Jorgensen.
I'm just saying. Are there any
So at this
questions?
time, we'll take questions.
Received.
Thank you. Questions? Ms. Taylor?
I don't have a question, but again, I love these buzzwords. You are, basically, when you mentioned, and people might have missed it, greeting students before you redirect them. Something to be said to say, hey, Charlie, what's going on?
Good morning.
Instead of, what are you doing in the hallway?
Take the hat off your head.
Exactly. So humanizing our kiddos, I adore that, especially on the middle school level when they're kind of figuring things out, smelling themselves, as my mother used to say.
Yes.
I really appreciate that, because it's a small thing that makes a big difference for someone to learn their name. So that's just a quick thing that I noticed that I really appreciate, and that I hope we can do in all buildings if we're not already doing it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I think
Again, I want to commend you too, of all the proactive things that seem to be going on there, even bringing in the dogs, you know. And, you know, inviting parents, the coffee chats, you know. You know, we obviously see when you go from lower elementary to elementary, the drop-off of parents, the idea, okay, I'm trying to let them have their wings and stuff, and I don't need to be involved. And I think you have to be involved in different ways. I think when, you know, kids are, as kids mature, they can kind of figure out what a parent's doing, so you have to be even more creative as a parent of a middle schooler. And obviously, we all know all the changes that go on in middle school with the young people who are there. So thank you very much.
I think I'll take you up on that offer. My baby girl may not like it, but I think I'll take you up on that.
I'm telling you, she'll love it.
No, she won't.
This is being,
Don't tell
being
them.
recorded, so. Okay.
Mic's off, so they can't hear.
I will be there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Your question, Mr. Wolston.
You didn't ask the last one.
You have to jump in there, because when I go, that means it's all.
I know Paul sometimes takes some
I wasn't going to call on Paul. He's had the requisite number of questions. Mr. Wollaston.
I was just gonna mention that I really like what you said about not touching teachers to cover while they're in a PLC, because that also makes for a great culture, and that's what's gonna keep people wanting to work somewhere. Because no one wants to work in a place where they're just constantly bombarded with work till it's time to go, because then they get burnt out. Like nobody wants
work.
Like, as I was saying, I'm a man of the people. I'm a man of the people. So I understand. We all understand. Work to be prepared. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna keep it real. I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. You know, because when you have your little breaks and your time to yourself, you don't want to be covering nobody's class. So I'm gonna just keep it honest about it. But
You're getting me in trouble.
you don't have to respond. You don't even got to look my way. It's not like I'm not there. But that's a great culture aspect, because I know people who are teaching in schools and they have complaints because they can't get their actual work done because they're too busy covering somebody else's class. So things like that go a long way in retaining staff. So that's something that we can definitely use as a benefit to ourselves. And as the $1 million question is there anything you need or any way we can support?
So no, I do believe, thank you for asking that. We do have all the resources that we need and require in order to move our students. I am going to try to put a selfish plug for the middle school. So October 12th in the evening, we have a panel for our parents. It's called Thriving and Surviving in the Middle School. And so any parents who are out there listening, if you have a middle school student, we have students from Old and some parents who are going to be there, just giving them tools and strategies for how to be more successful at the middle school level. And then, of course, October 19th, which is our Dads of Great Students. Want as many dads, uncles, grandparents that are out there to come on out, because I would love for our halls to be filled with gentlemen supporting our kids in a positive manner. So.
Do you have times for those? You have times for those by any chance?
I'm sorry?
Do you have time?
For the 12th and
I believe it's, I think they're both at 6:30. Okay, Charger Dogs is at 6, and we're at 6:30 for, it's in the newsletter. Sure, at 6. Okay.
Any other questions? Going once, twice, gone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, Mr. Parker.
As Mr. Parker's coming up, I will make one pitch based on Ms. Jorgensen's remarks. For some principals are better than others at sending the board the weekly newsletters. We really would like those. It's really a way that we can get a snapshot of kind of what's going on in the schools and see all those dates without having to go school by school. So appreciate that. Mr. Parker.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Excuse me while I remove my dissertation seminar writing hat. So I'm literally in between writing seminars. So, apologize for stepping in late, but this is important and they understand. So just stepping away. So, obviously, we're last, right? So I won't be extra long. But first and foremost, I wanted to, thank my faculty and staff and my leadership team, many over here. I won't say all their names because that'll take a while, but they've helped us to, by all accounts, kind of get started and get off to a great start for the school year. And really, what we tried to do, it's a difference so much of a difference that a year makes. All right, and this year, I think we were able to not only get in front of the students and the faculty, but really kind of set the culture for what we were looking for in terms of, kind of being in the building, being back in the building, being able to have assemblies, be all together, but really setting the conditions for learning. All right, so, we spent a lot of time with a great new leadership team, like brand new. But with that is the gift of the hunger of the work that they're looking to do. So with that said, I'll kind of start talking about the work that we kind of got in front of, and really it'll be aligned with what the rest of the principals spoke about around culture and academics. And so from the academic standpoint, we've been able to establish, we have STEM and humanities supervisors, and the importance of them is they are able to support our, assistant principals and myself in kind of really digging in and supporting teachers and leading some of that work and aligning, some of the school-wide academic goals that we've set forth. We also have aligned with, the vertical alignment with the district in terms of our performance matters and, really our interim assessments. I think that's an area that we really focused on, but just really trying to fortify what that looks like in terms of Tier 1. So you hear a lot of Tier 1 talk, but we try to do that with some of those things, and now we have a database such as Performance Matters to kind of really look at those. We have our in-school lab support, something that's kind of always been, for something that we've had. But I think, in terms of strengths is like we always have, the opportunity for students to kind of pop in, but, kind of really looking to fortify how we maybe steer students that need intervention that may not show up on their own. So I think, in kind of bringing that whole culture piece, we have the ability to now say, okay, we're looking at these data points. Maybe this is someone we need to steer that's not necessarily taking themselves to go get support. We looked at things like our after-school support. Not that we gotten away from the traditional, hey, I'm going to meet with my teacher, or teacher, hey, student, come stay after school and kind of work on this concept. But now there's an opportunity as opposed to formerly known, we call it the homework club, where it's just kind of a hub where students may come, they may get support, they may just do homework. We were really intentional now about what we're doing in terms of actual subject matters and aligning teachers with those subject matters that we actually have the students sign up for. In terms of school culture, I think what you'll see is, academics is kind of first in terms of, alphabet, but then also what's on the page. But, for us, really what we wanted to push was that you have to have the culture to be able to kind of get to the academics. And I think Ms. Taylor kind of alluded to some of those different pieces. And so we have our student support center. So now we have full implementation. And what I mean by that is last year it was a concept that we introduced. We learned a lot from it. That group of individuals that work in that space, they are dynamic in themselves, but now we were able to kind of take data away from last year and kind of say, let's be more intentional about what types of supports we're going to provide students as opposed to just the pop in and triage. We looked at rebranding our advisory, and really what I mean by rebranding is, we looked at some of the different, we took a lot of feedback from our educators actually. And so, the strength of it is that it's a common time that we have our students in a space to kind of work on different concepts. But I think we actually now are able to use that space to focus more on SEL. And then in terms of rebranding it, we call it Connections. And Connections more so now to lock into those SEL components and really talk about some of the things we've been talking about for a couple years now, and that's that school connectedness. So students being able to connect peer-to-peer, but then also really that establish that relationship with other adults, all right? And so in some of the feedback we actually got and kind of thinking about our teachers and how we can support them and actually, providing that support is, that's me, is really we move the day. So something as minute as the logistics, like moving that day from Wednesday to Thursday, we're able to clear up teachers. So some of that feedback was, there was a lot happening with faculty meetings on Tuesday. Then Wednesday you have connection or advisory at that time. Then you have the Wednesday meeting where we provide professional development. So some of that feedback was to kind of spread it out so we can be able to do more work there. And then overall, the whole school culture and wellness. And really it's just bringing the awareness that we all occupy that space. And I think sometimes, in reflection, we indirectly kind of separate it. When we say things like staff climate or student climate, we're all in the same space. So what does that look like, and how do we all coexist, and what does that feel like, and what are the mechanisms to be able to have support for everyone? So in case in point, talk to the staff today about, different points in the year where we'll do some educator wellness, and not only just, and then we have some, we have some student voice opportunities, which is very big for me. And those will be opportunities where we connect with students to see, how we can kind of support them during a school day. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Questions?
I wasn't sure if you were going to go through all the strategies for improvement before we start asking questions?
I can.
Okay.
I can. I just heard my beep. So. Oh, it wasn't me? Okay. So I apologize. So I'll continue then. So I tried to embed some of it in there, but in terms of the actual, strategies for improvement, we talk about academics and culture. So again, we're going to use data to, drive, tier 1 and tier 2 interventions. As I said before, tier 1 instruction is nothing new, but at the same time now we can go and look at data. So we wanted to create a data culture in terms of creating strategies to turn around now and kind of utilize things like interventionists and really locking in different things like those data talks that have been introduced to the faculty, and really honing in on actual items to where we can start doing student improvement and really bring into our building that sense of culture, not only in the core areas, but every subject area. Tier 1, standards-based instruction, those will always exist. But again, now we have our walkthroughs protocols, and now we can use those and that data that comes away from that to now go in and focus in on, what's coming out of those school-wide. And so we can bring those themes back to the building, to the entire building, and then they can work in those PLCs and in faculty meetings and all those different pieces on those data points collectively as opposed to separate. And then, it's one of those things, like a lot of times you'll get, you get close to the end of a semester and all those different pieces, and now we're doing interventions and kind of scrambling, but now we want to look at things quarterly as opposed to in a little earlier and see where we can intervene in terms of supports. Again, in establishing the school culture, establishing a data-driven culture, and really it's just, we got the conditions for learning, now let's go and look at data. And some of that data, I think we always look at it quantitatively, but some of that is qualitatively, and some of that data is not even all on the teacher. It's also providing opportunities now with things that we've embedded in kind of some of our, support for the students, but then also students turning around and saying, okay, here's the feedback from the teacher, and being able to respond. And so literally looking at those different data points and collecting those pieces and going back and having those data talks as part of that data to kind of look and see where kids are coming from. Are they learning? Is it task completion, or are they really taking away their learning experience? In terms of emphasis on cohesive routines, and really just, like I said, we take away from last year, just really being able to be cohesive. And I think a lot of that is having the same kind of language around data, around culture, all those different pieces. Talked about increasing student voice. That's something that will always be there in terms of anytime that, I'm in leadership, that will always be a piece. I think you learn a lot from students if you listen in hard enough. And our students and their families are awesome in the sense that, they will communicate with you, and they actually have ideas. And, a lot of those times it's information that's noteworthy and can bring back. We also talk about bringing in being intentional about our Saturday. We want to do a Saturday school. And then, also just kind of what we're doing after school. So I kind of alluded to the fact that we streamline what those supports look like, and just really being intentional about after school support, certain subject areas. And then for Saturday, we're looking at different concepts. It could be motivations, it could be time management, it could be SAT prep. So we really didn't want to confine it, but myself, other administrators, other faculty, really taking the opportunity to work with students to just get to that next level in terms of being able to provide support. And then another piece of the school culture is always multi-tier system support. You've heard MTSS. And again, for us, I think it's really going to the next level and kind of fortifying what those indicators look like. And those things can maneuver. They can change from year to year, but then you'll find over the years there's some that kind of stay the same. So really just identifying what those academic ones are, those behavioral ones are, things like attendance always come into play. So all those different pieces, and not that it's one group owning it, but then how does the entire school kind of know where and what they need to do to support it kind of more so inside out as opposed to the other way around.
Thank you very much. Questions? Julene first, then Mr. Panos, then Darlene. Oh,
Go ahead,
Julene first, we'll go
Okay.
right down the...
Thank you. So this is kind of a two-part question. You mentioned the after-school and Saturday support. Are those for students that are volunteering their time saying, I need the support, or is it also a combination of those that don't want to go but are kind of being, quote-unquote, forced to go? And then the other part, too, is like, how are you reaching those kids to make sure that they are actually going and getting that support and help that they need?
Okay, thanks for that question, and I would say both. I wouldn't say force. I'll say coerced or recommended strongly. But yeah, it's just another opportunity. And at the high school level, different from maybe the lower levels, is a lot of times we may have services after school that kids just can't access because they may have a guardian, that works third shift or second shift or whatever, and they're actually the caregiver. And so if we have a certain, like a writing workshop, that's something that comes to mind from, the student voice from last year. If I had more opportunities to do that, I would do it. I'd take those couple of hours and go in on a Saturday and do it. That's an opportunity there to kind of do that. Or, as opposed to kind of going down the wormhole and, looking at discipline, it can be another opportunity to say, you know what, we have enough data that says this student is struggling in this area. We can bring them into this, area where we only have, a selected amount of students where we can be more intentional around what kind of conversations we're having, what strategies and skills we want them to build. So yes, we can do both. Wanted it to be kind of open that way. And for the high school, it'll be new. So, there's going to be room to, make modifications if need be. But that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Cantor?
Thank you. That was my question.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Anybody here?
Go ahead.
Mr.
Go
Panos?
ahead. You can go, jump right in.
No, darling.
Can you talk a little bit more about the quarterly academic program audits? And are you doing it across the programs, including the arts and I don't know, we used to call them industrial arts, they're not that anymore, I know, but the more trade-skilled kinds of programs? If you can just share a little bit more about those.
Absolutely. So, as a leadership team, we always kind of connect anyway, just, from week to week, from moment to moment, those different pieces. But we have the luxury in a large place with a lot of adults. We also have a building leadership team. And what that may look like is not only, our supervisors and our administrators, but also liaisons for certain departments. And then we spend that time to really kind of either look at data or kind of take in things that they bring and, be able to develop, make program adjustments prior to actually kind of seeing that final kind of data piece. Kind of a takeaway from, maybe towards the end of last year, kind of looking if you see trends in units as opposed to like waiting till you get close to that end, then you can kind of go back and develop strategies. And again, we have the walkthrough protocol, which what I think it actually kind of reveals some things that kind of says, you know what, it may be this particular space, or it may be something building wide where we need to kind of go back and get to the drawing board. So. You're welcome.
Mr. Panos?
I had a question about to start with the SATs, and it's maybe more of a question, I don't know to who to address it, but it says, but the benchmark for reading and writing is 480 for the SATs, but for math, it's 530. And so the consequence, the percent of students of the state, as well as the district, who meet the SAT benchmarks for reading and writing is higher than for math. It's much lower for math because it is. So I don't know, Ms. Hattie, maybe you could answer this question. Why does the state have such differing benchmark SAT scores? And yeah.
I can answer that. When the College Board redesigned the test, Dr. Oliver already mentioned this a little bit, but what they did was they looked at college students and how they were doing in their college courses related to, well, writing, more so than like literature classes, but writing and mathematics. And they actually looked at students in their sophomore year. Then they drew back for students that were being successful in their sophomore year in those classes, what did they score on the SAT in the two respective areas in order to be successful at that point in school. They didn't look at freshmen because there's a lot of variation in terms of how students are doing and adjusting to college. So I had attended a workshop right after they made these changes, and there was the regional person from the College Board explaining this. But when you think about that, what ends up happening is typically college students in their sophomore year who are taking mathematics classes tend to be the students who are pursuing engineering, mathematics, the sciences, and so on. Most college students that are not going into those areas tend to get their math courses out of the way in the first year, take the lower level courses that they need to take just to move on in their schooling. What ended up happening was that they looked at students who were actually more so pursuing mathematics, engineering, science, and so on. So of course they scored higher on the SAT when they went to take the SAT. That's actually how they established the benchmarks. So they were looking at the success of the students and then drawing back to see what they needed to be successful. And there was a disparity between what students needed to be successful in upper level math courses versus maybe a writing course that students were taking in their second year of college. That's how they designed the benchmarks for the new one.
Right. I mean, the difference is enormous.
It is enormous. And we brought that up. Other people have brought that up. They said, well, this is how we established it.
Well, are they expecting the math scores to go up as a consequence of setting a higher benchmark?
I mean,
I don't know, how do you? They didn't say anything about it. They just did it.
No, they were just looking at what did students need to be successful after that freshman year in those courses, if you look back at what their SAT scores were.
Okay. And I'll just add to that, they define success as a 75% likelihood of a student earning a C or higher, and specifically for mathematics, that would be in college-level courses in algebra, stats, pre-calculus, or calculus.
A 75% chance of
I mean, I can honestly say as a literature major, I looked for every class that qualified as a math course to take. So I took philosophy courses, and they counted. But, a lot of my friends and classmates and teammates that I went to school with in college that I went into the math, side that needed, I have a college teammate who was a math major. She was taking Calculus 5 by the time she was a second semester sophomore. So there is a difference in terms of what someone might have needed to be successful, as Dr. Oliver explained it, if they are pursuing those subjects.
And then I'll just add, so on the other side, they must earn at least a C in a credit-bearing college-level course in history, literature, social science, or writing.
But it has no particular implication for what we would do, this different benchmark, and the fact that the numbers look pretty bad in math, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Right, it is,
All right,
it is what it is. That's the benchmark.
thank you.
No, I didn't know if you wanted to remark on that.
Any other questions, Mr. Panos?
Well, I was curious about the use of Tier 1 standards and the standards-based instruction. It's listed as a strategy. First of all, is Tier 1 a level at the high school? How are you using the term Tier 1 at the high school versus, you know, I mean, I can understand it at the elementary level, but where you have leveled instruction.
So Tier 1 instruction just means it's the general instruction that's used to capture all the students.
Yeah, but but it's leveled instruction.
Yes, but it's not all the same. So in other words, the basic instruction in an AP course is different than instruction, Tier 1 instruction at a college level course. It's still the main lectures that are going on in the classroom is considered.
That's
Tier
what
1.
I understand. Now, so I don't understand, okay. Okay, so,
I'm trying to
okay,
understand.
why is this a strategy? I mean, this is what you normally do. I mean,
Correct. So we're just doubling down on good instruction, basically, is what we're saying.
okay,
So honestly, nothing new. So we've had standards-based curriculum. We teach the curriculum. We're just saying we're trying to double down and strengthen those practices as part of our plan
Okay.
to improve our assessment scores.
and the same thing is true for the strategy of using data to improve? Tier
Correct.
1? Okay.
So again, just digging down deeper, strengthening those practices, also, you know, expanding those practices. So as we've heard earlier, you know, Dr. Haiti is leading data chats. So we've had data, but, you know, we're trying some new things as well.
Okay. Could you explain what is meant by by alignment of the school-wide academic goals? Alignment of the goals. I mean, that seems to be one of the.
Yeah, so it's really just around cohesion, just making sure all our instructional practices have cohesion throughout the school, regardless of department. So, you know, you've heard things like the I do, you do, we do, also known as the workshop model, those different pieces. You may have certain segments within that instructional block. The idea is that they should look similar, you know, across different disciplines. So you may be in a classroom, you might get to a certain part in the lesson where you would expect to see student discourse, you know, between each other, between peers, and just making sure that those different elements are visible throughout, you know, all of our academics subject areas.
And Mr. Parker, if I can just add, also new this year, we have supervisors of both STEM and humanities.
Yeah.
So with their leadership, I think that's also another layer of alignment and cohesion that we're going to see throughout Windsor High School.
Right. Well, alignment. You know, my picture of it was, well, it's easy to use math. You know, this you do algebra 2 before pre-calculus. That's an alignment, and you make sure that the basics for the next course are met before you go to the more. And the same thing somewhat with English. You can do the same thing with, and now history. But that's not exactly what you mean.
I think we're using the terms differently.
All right.
Can I just, to clarify, because I think it's coming up, you know, in all the presentation, the focus on Tier 1 and what's different. We've been always doing that. I think what's really different this year is being very intentional with what we do in Tier 1 and then what we do with the data. So we've always collected data. Kids have always taken tests. But what do we do with it? And how do we work with teachers to make sure that the data doesn't die after an administration of the test? Right? Like now we're very intentional in terms we're holding everyone accountable, starting with ourselves, at looking at the data after every administration, looking at trends, and looking at what adult practice we need to make sure is taking place in order for the data to go in the direction we want it to go. And that links right back into Tier 1. So Tier 1 is basically your on-level instruction that every single teacher in every single classroom is supposed to be doing, whether it's a college class, honors, or AP. The idea here is what strategies are we using within Tier 1 to make sure that most of the students, after you do your lesson, have gotten, right? So the idea here is when you teach a lesson, you want the majority of the kids to understand it and able to independently work on it. So that's what we're really doing differently, is making sure our Tier 1 is where it needs to be. So good teaching is taking place. So that's basically just what we're talking about.
Okay. We have accountability in this. Well, I think you touched on the rebranding. That's not just a renaming, that's a re-emphasis. You used the word rebranding of advisory blocks to connections or something. What is the essential difference then is what again?
So for the most part, we just really took an opportunity to not only look at the logistics in terms of delivery from the teachers to the students, but then also be able to provide more of a focus on SEL. And so prior to, there were so many different elements that might have been embedded in the formerly known advisory.
Right.
Students just, even kind of thinking about the student voice and a lot of the information we got from students, it wasn't seen as something that, because it didn't carry a credit or it didn't, carry certain elements, it didn't seem as important as opposed to being really intentional about saying, hey, this is an opportunity where we're going to build connections. And then we also, I think, we're able to use our student leaders. That was another opportunity, and we have our juniors and seniors, I think we have about 50 of them that actually go into those classrooms and lead a lot of those lessons with an adult. And so we've actually been able to, I think, capture more of the younger students, so they may go in with freshmen and sophomores and kind of lead some of those activities. So then it's like kind of rebranding. It's like, as opposed to like, hey, just come here for this time and kind of work on these elements around, things from counseling or whatever. Now we're being more intentional about some of the social emotional learning components and just kind of changing the name. To be honest, that was some of the research I did. Visited a school. And kind of noticed that a lot of people call it connection. So again, a play on words.
Okay.
Kind of a shift in logistics, but that's pretty much it.
Are you set for, as far as the high school goes, Mr. Panos?
I think so.
Then I know there's a couple other hands up here. First Jeremy, and then Mr. Wollaston.
Thank you. Could you just talk about the Dub Dads program a little bit and what that's about and addressing?
Dub Dads. So kind of a play on what the elementary and middle school are doing, but another opportunity to kind of be intentional about inviting males into the building and really kind of providing different levels of support. The blessing of Dr. Hill and Ms. Christina Morales, we've been kind of talking and working, and we're at a place now where we're going to promote that and kind of invite father figures. That could be uncles, that could be whoever, but really just now getting males into the building. And actually I kind of presented to the staff recently to just look at what they might see those individuals kind of supporting. I have ideas, but I think collectively, I'd like to hear from them as well. But it could be something as simple as someone that they could connect with and talk to, do a check-in or check-out. Also, it could be something where, it could be someone sitting in a classroom, just giving that level of support. Just another opportunity also for the community to kind of come into the building and support from that realm. So we just dubbed it Dub Dads, kind of a play on Dub Hub and, kind of some of the older Dub kind of Windsor High School stuff. But that's really what the genesis of it is. And it'll be new. So, again, another opportunity to, kind of grow from there once we get it started.
And is that something that you're presuming to have on a monthly basis, or how many?
Yeah, so it really would depend on the availability, but as often as possible. And just kind of depending on what, more so, high school's a little more transient, a lot of different moving parts. So it may be around events, it may be around certain times of day, those kind of things. Is kind of how I envision it. But a lot of that will be more about, what we get for volunteers and things like that. And so, to be continued.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hill, you had a...
Great question, Mr. Halleck. I just wanted to chime in. So my thought was actually from, I want to say it's over a year ago now. So a lot of national news was made by a district in Louisiana. They were having troubles in the school. And so they brought in these fathers from the community. And as he said, fathers, uncles, just grown men into the school. So they weren't security guards or nothing like that, but just the presence of males from the community walking around, as Mr. Parker said, building relationships with the kids. We are going to provide some training, not just tell it, come as you are, not here. But being in the building, it was very positive. And I've had the experience anecdotally in school where, when I was younger, it was typically somebody's grandmother that came in the building, and she changes the whole tenor of the building, right? Or somebody's auntie. But if it's somebody from the community, you knew, okay, this is different. This is a person I see outside of school. This person knows my mom, knows my dad, my relatives. So just a mixture of people from the community. And I think as Mr. Parker said too, we got to give kudos to the elementary school because they've been doing this and they're way ahead of us at the secondary level. But I think it's important, and I thought it was important enough to start pursuing it at the secondary level. And then we had an uptick. I expected it to be last spring, but we had an uptick in COVID cases. So I told them to put a freeze on it. But I'm really looking forward to, getting these fathers and male figures trained in the schools. And as he said, that's what they'll do. They'll be just there to be around. They're like one more adult in the building, eyes in the building, but mainly relationship building and students seeing some adult from the community. So if you're free, come on through.
Mr. Wollaston and then Ms. Cantor.
Yeah, so just looking back as kind of an overview at the academic performance index again, the numbers as far as the difference from 2018 to 2019 for ELA is around 3, math performance and science performance around 5-ish, 4 to 5-ish, 2 to 3-ish for each. Those are just the facts of the matter. Another fact of the matter is that we're also coming off a pandemic. But I recently heard a man in leadership say that if he could relive his younger days in leadership, the one thing he would try to do would be to encourage more people. So I had a crazy idea that maybe if I came here and I said something encouraging or encouraged us all to just do what we have to do to come back here next time we have to have this conversation and have it be that 3-point deficit is no longer there and the 5-point deficit is no longer there, just because we all know you catch more bees with honey, not vinegar, right? So it's important for us, I believe, as well as a board, to set a culture that starts in this room that empowers you all to go forth and just do your job the way you have to do it without feeling like you're being reprimanded unless you really have to. I'm sure those times come, but I'm just hoping to encourage you guys all to just go out and do what you have to do so we can make a change and we can be the city on the hill in Windsor that everyone looks at, because I believe we're all capable. We have the resources and people, and we have the resources financially as well to do what we need to do. So that's just my encouragement to you guys. And if there's anything you need, there's a time to let it be known.
Well, what I can say, and as yourself, Mr. Wellston, and also Ms. Taylor, you are part of our school governance council at the high school, and I appreciate your contributions every month. Not only your insight, but then even kind of visiting the building and lending us your child. All those different pieces mean a lot in terms of trying to do the work. I think it's really important, like while we're trying to move, yes, we want to move forward, beyond pandemic and those kind of things. But, it's really like when we start really talking about vertical pieces and those kind of things, you guys are all a part of that. And, literally every encounter I know that, I've had, it's always been supportive. So, as long as we keep that, I guess the gate's always open to ask those questions or those requests. But thank you for all the work that you guys do and just trying to support us.
Ms. Cantor?
Thank you. I just wanted to give you some feedback on the after-school connecting with teachers for makeup work. I've heard all positive things about it, so I want you to know that, and it seems to be working out well. And then you have pilot dub dads, and Dr. Hill had mentioned about moms possibly going in. Do you have any intentions on doing that, and if so, when?
You want to take that? Crazy enough, I've already had moms ask me, so.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Ms. Cantor. And so I know this is being recorded, so I'm gonna be loud and clear. I did say that, and I had to backtrack because the consensus was they wanted the men. And they felt like moms are, I won't say overly, because we need y'all, but moms are well represented across school districts on a regular basis. And too often, the males are not. And so we decided to just focus on the males. So any complaints in the community, my next coffee talk is in a few weeks. I guess I'll see you then, moms. But we're going to focus on dads and males being in the buildings at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is hold off any other questions that we can submit. I know you had some questions, Mr. Panos, and I think some of the discussion here, we may have others, but we've been going at this for over, 2 hours. So I want to thank everyone, and if there's any kind of final statement from either Dr. Hill or Dr. Oliver.
So first, I'd like to thank the board for inviting us, and I think this was clearly long overdue to give us some kind of starting point or baseline for the work that we have to do. We know that all the data has not come in, as Dr. Oliver shared, but you clearly hear the focus of the leaders in the district. I'm very proud, and I was very happy to see them presenting on their particular buildings as well. But we know what we have to do, and I think that momentum is moving here in the district. Staff knows, they understand that it's not business as usual. I appreciate all the questions, even the extra discussion around Tier 1. I figured that was going to be something that people would wonder, like, so what have we been doing? No one here is saying that folks haven't worked hard all this time, but I like the word intentional, and we're going to be intentional. So in looking at the data, what all of the leaders are doing with their staff members, and not just looking at it and say, oh yeah, we looked at data, look, it's up on the screen, but really digging down and understanding what's going on with each teacher in his or her classroom and their individual students, and hearing folks are actually asking for help and assistance and filling in those gaps and skill sets that, we assume, right? And I've always said, in the 30 years I've been in this profession, we're the only profession that people expect to come out of college and actually know everything. Everyone else gets to practice, right? Lawyers are practicing, doctors are practicing, nurses are practicing, engineers are practicing. They don't give you anything significant till you show you got some real skill. You're not going to get the bridge the first week you're there. But teachers are expected to come in and know everything, and that's unrealistic. And so I'm glad that folks are saying, hey, I could use some shoring up over here or some training over here. And I don't put out predictions, as Dr. Oliver said. I don't have a crystal ball and don't want one. But I do expect us to not be sitting in the same place a year from now. And I want to thank Dr. Oliver for getting everyone together and putting together this presentation here in the district, and thank my leaders for their presentations tonight.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you. So if you want to release your folks while we do our next order of business,
go?
you can go. Not you. Not you.
Y'all can go.
Hopefully you'll have something to sign at the end of the next item.
Yeah. Right,
Nathan, you can't go either.
I'll pay if we could go to a restaurant. I'm hungry.
Depends on the restaurant.
Oh, I'm hungry. Let's go.
We're gonna get cranky.
Some surf and turf or some glass of wine.
Miss Jorgensen. David, I'm serious. Hangover's kicking in.
A bunch of elementary kids with the last bell of the day. They're out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good job. Where'd you mess that?
If that bell rings, you better not be near the doorway.
But I didn't go over my time. That's not your goal. That's not your goal. They're gonna learn. We're gonna do it.
I don't know how much you want
Jay,
to
I'm
say.
telling them, we're talking, but stay ass on course.
I got it. They did the first paragraph, but not the second one.
Oh, okay.
And then he keeps talking, it makes himself, I'm sitting there like, I don't care. I'm like, shut up. Like, you. I'm sorry, Lexi, I got to remember, you are grown, but there's another side to me, too.
The next order of business is the CABE Level 2 Distinction Award, and I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Lockhart?
Mr. President, I move the Board of Education approve its submission of the required criteria for the CABE Level 2 Distinction Award to be submitted by the Superintendent's Office.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion made by Mr. Lockhart, seconded by Mr. Panos. Any discussion? Mr. Lockhart?
Just for overview for the board, a review for the board and maybe new for the public. CABE, which is the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, believes that boards of education and superintendents which exhibit the most effective leadership are characterized by their ability to work together as teams. The CABE Board Recognition Awards are designed to recognize boards in which work effectively in this manner. Boards which fulfill 22 of the following 34 levels of Level 1 criteria, including one minimum of 3 in each area, are awarded Level 1, which is the CABE Board Leadership Award. We won that award back in 2019 and 2020, which is critical for the next level. In order to be appropriately recognized, those boards which truly are exemplary, CABE has established a second level of awards, which is called the Board of Distinction Award. Only boards which have achieved Level 1 distinction at least twice in the prior 4 years are eligible to receive the Board of Distinction Award. This board was honored with that award back in 2021. It's very, very difficult to obtain. It's designed to be that way. This board historically has worked very well together. Even though we may strongly disagree on topics and philosophies, but the fact that we've grown to become very civil and collaborative, we've grown to be able to strongly disagree, however not be disagreeable, which is a very good thing, and it's been recognized by the state. So I personally serve on the CABE Board of Directors. I strongly believe in CABE and what they provide to all boards of education within the state of Connecticut. They've done a good job in providing services for us, but more importantly, I believe as a board, we function very well together, and it's definitely recognized by the entire state. So it is my hope that every board member has had an opportunity to review the packet that was put together by the president through the superintendent's office. The criteria has changed. In the past, it used to be you had to be unanimous. You had to have all your board members vote for it. That has now since changed, since there's been numerous boards across the state that felt that during certain times, one vote would be unfair to be able to stop a process, an award of this magnitude. So it went to a majority vote with the understanding that it had to be done in public session and approved by the board in public session. So that's why we bring this packet before you today. And it is due on October 7th. That's why we could not do it during the October meeting. We were prepared to do it at the September meeting, but it would have been rushed and not fair to the board. That's why we offer it to you this evening.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I'll just point out that it's always a pleasure to disagree with you. And maybe that's the difference between us and other districts. I think the policy committee fellow who just recently retired, the old.
Yes, Ven, yes.
I asked him a question one time, and he reviewed, and it was a big, discussion and disagreements on policies and stuff like that, and yet, so he had the remark in his email. He said, "I must say, that, that the board, for all its disagreement, it doesn't deteriorate into shouting and all that sort of thing." And I think you deserve it.
Well, I'm glad you brought him up. He has actually
Mastaro,
retired.
Vince Mastaro.
Yes, he's actually retired from CABE. And unfortunately, he had a medical incident while snow blowing at his home last winter, and it kind of forced him to retire from CABE. But he's definitely a resource. But more importantly, when we get these rewards, we take great pictures with the Commissioner of Education. We actually took a picture with the Commissioner of Education at the time, which was Dr. Cardona. Soon after that, he became the Secretary of Education. And it's our hope that he will be at CABE this year and to be able to take a photo with the board with us when we win this award in November. So looking forward to that positive publicity being placed on our website.
Okay, so all those in favor of the motion made by Mr. Lockhart, seconded by Mr. Panos, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Abstentions? Vote carries 9-0-0. Next item is announcements, and we'll start with Darlene.
Great presentations, awesome meeting. Thank you very much.
Good, short and sweet. Mr. Halleck.
Just wanted to thank everybody for their presentations tonight. They were all great. Thank you. That's all I got.
Mr. Wollaston?
No comments.
Ms. Galinsky?
I'm going to piggyback off of everyone else. Great presentations, definitely very informative and long overdue. And I'm very excited to actually be able to do this again in the near future.
Ms. Taylor?
Piggyback on everybody else, it was really, really great, and it was also great to see new administrators do it so well. They're just awesome. And congratulations, JV Volleyball, on their win tonight.
Ms. Cantor?
Again, great presentation. I really appreciate it. Very informative, and happy to see everybody. Everybody did a great job. Thank you.
Mr. Lockhart?
Mr. President, on behalf of the board, we express our condolences to the Sorbo and Fury family on the passing of your mother-in-law, who was married to the Superintendent Emeritus of Windsor Public Schools. I know that this is a very difficult time for you, and we are here in support of you, whatever you need from us as you go through this time of grieving. As well, let's think of those in Florida and Puerto Rico. This is not a political issue. This is a human issue where no matter what your political party or whatever, we're all human beings and we all deserve some level of dignity and support in time of needs, and this is one of those times. So I'm just hoping that this is something, tragic as it may be, that it just brings this country together a little bit for the sake of mankind. And thank you for the presentation.
Mr. Panos?
Yes, thank you for those words. Mr. Lockhart, obviously, we expressed our sentiments very well. Also, Ms. Oliver, I'd like to thank you for a good, very good presentation. Excellent. Thank you.
And I'll say what everyone else has said. Thank you very much for the presentation. Because ultimately, we know the importance of safety in our schools. We know the importance of social emotional learning. But we really, those things are necessary to get at what we really focus on, and that is student achievement. Shame on the state for still not having all the materials to us, but I know they're very understaffed there as we see what's going on in throughout the country with staffing education these days. Thank you, Mr. Lockhart, regarding your words about my mother-in-law, who was a great supporter of Windsor education, public education in general. We have a meeting on, the next regular board meeting is October 18th, but we also are going to have a special session November 1st regarding board evaluation. And so if folks can, by the next board meeting, do your self-evaluation of what you think how the board is doing, that's been sent to you, and get that to Nick Caruso, that would be great. And on that, I'm looking for the last motion of the day.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
move for adjournment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
Jumped ahead.
Sorry. Motion made by Mr. Lockhart, seconded by Ms. Cantor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? We are adjourned at 8:58.